Where there is no struggle, there's no progress. See, life is about challenge, it's about moving forward, and it's not always going to be easy. And specifically, it's going to be these challenges, that's how we grow. And it's going to be like pushing through those hard times. See, you survived every hard time you've gone through so far because you're watching this. So hi, my name is Drew. I'm a New York State Certified Addiction Recovery Coach, recovery peer advocate. Welcome to The Reset. You know, we talk about recovery here. And this is my website, The Reset NYC. And, we get into principles. Some of the principles just for the day, focusing on where we are today, being where your feet are at, being mindful. So many times when we're thinking about the past, we're stressing out about the past, or we're anxious about the future. We have to be present and be mindful where we are, only for the day, thinking about where we're at for the day, doing something each day for our recovery, making a meeting, calling our sponsor, praying, meditating, exercising, journaling, doing step work. Somebody said, it's crazy to belong to a 12-step, AA, NA, any of the 12-step programs and not working the 12 steps. Sharing, being a part of a community, pain shared is pain lessened. Each and every day we do something that will help us, lessen that load, being a part of a community that will help us not isolate. Being by ourselves, it's bad. That fuels addiction when you're alone. If you're not working on something, something is working on you. Having commitment, getting outside of yourself, doing service, doing service for a 12-step program, doing service volunteering, working at a food pantry, helping out, working at a church, spirituality, feeding your faith, spirituality, helping, believing in something greater than yourself, having a higher power. I believe in God, God, plugging into something, that power, because we can't do it alone. But when you can pray, when you can believe in something greater than yourself, that'll give you real power. That'll give you something to believe in, not just yourself. That faith is so important. Faith heals. Having faith, out of faith comes hope. You can have hope. You can have hope in something else, and then out of hope comes love. So many times people cannot love themselves. So self-love, self-care, taking care of yourself, self-love, self-care. I say, discipline is a form of self-love. So going to meetings, having a program, a program you can articulate. That's doing something every day, consistently caring for yourself, self-love. Also, like the basics of getting sleep, getting the right amount of sleep every night. And that's having a sleep hygiene program, making sure that watching too much TV, too much streaming services, which, watching it before you go to bed will not give you the right type of sleep. Not drinking caffeine before you go to bed. Also hydrating throughout the day, drinking the right amount of water, eating the right amount of diet, not eating too many sweets and so forth, eating the right foods, the quality of foods, not just junk food or fast food, So it's a holistic approach to recovery, building a bigger life, having hobbies, outside interests, because you can go to meetings, but life is bigger than that. You create a life that you love so much that you don't want to lose it, that you want to hold on to it, that you want to cling on to it. So, we have our meetings, we have our spiritual side, we have community, we have service, volunteerism, helping other people, then we have outside interests, we have hobbies, doing these things, and then, making sure that we're taking care of our bodies, going to the doctor, if you have issues, trauma, trauma is something that many of us deal with, I have PTSD, dealing with that. Trauma is something that we all have dealt with, gone through. Trauma is so very real in today's society. Many of us have had childhood trauma, have had adulthood trauma. A lot of us have had bad childhoods, bad adulthoods. We have to deal with that and get to the root of that, whether it's going through a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, dealing with that and having them deal with that. Because if you don't get to the root of it, it's going to get to the root of you. It's going to eat away with you. And unresolved trauma will kill you. So you have to deal with your trauma so that it just doesn't spill out everywhere. Because if you don't take care of your side of the street, it's going to spill on somebody else's side of the street. So we want to be able to like handle and deal with ourselves and our recovery so that we have a balanced life. Balance in all things. Not being too overboard, not being too high, not being too low. Everything balanced. And we're trying to live our best life possible, striving each and every day to be the best version of ourselves. And you can do it, and you matter. And I'm cheering for you. You know, my name is Drew, and I'm a New York State certified addiction recovery coach, recovery advocate, and a veteran supported recovery professional. And this is The Reset. This is my website. And please like and subscribe. And tell me if there's issues, things you want to do. I have private clients. I see people. I help people maintain their recovery. If there's topics you want to talk about, I run groups. You know, I'm in New York City. And if you're interested in a specific thing, please send me a comment, and I'll be happy to respond to it. I respond to all comments. You know, and I'm here to support you. I'm like an online recovery coach for you. I'm here. I'm here to support and maintain you. I believe in you. You can do it. Recovery is possible, and it's beautiful. God bless you, and have a blessed day.